My ex let his stepkids call me mom for free babysitting, then falsely reported me to CPS for child hoarding, using a fake officer. When I asked him why, he laughed and said, "Guess you should have been nicer to me." I didn't say a word. That was 3 months ago. This morning, he was standing outside my apartment in tears, holding Lily's drawing like it meant something. When I first married my husband Kyle, we were happy, or at least, I thought we were, until our child was born. Because around this time I got a promotion which meant I'd be getting paid more than Kyle. So we agreed it was best for him to be a stay-at-home father. But when I'd get home from my 10-hour shifts, I'd find the house looking 10 times messier than when I left in the morning. There were dirty diapers left all over the floor, and Kyle would either be asleep with a beer bottle in his hand or drinking while watching recorded NBA games from the 80s. And worst of all, he kept the habit that he promised he'd drop once our baby girl was born, going out with the boys every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. I tried my best to respect him, to keep our relationship alive, but after 4 years, nothing had changed, and I was completely burnt out, so we divorced. Well, within 6 months, I noticed his Facebook status had already switched from single to married, not to mention his new wife and her kids being plastered across his socials, and I wouldn't have cared, but it broke our baby girl's heart. He canceled plans on her multiple times because he promised to spend time with them. So while I practically had to bend the ends of the earth to take time off work to go to my daughter's school plays, Kyle just wouldn't show up, and instead post pictures of him at his kids' scouts and soccer practices. The bi-monthly visits were neglected too. I could see the disappointment in my daughter's eyes every time she sat at the window, waiting for him to show up, only to see the clock tick past another missed promise. And Lily didn't have many friends. I guess being an only child and living in a neighborhood full of retirees didn't help. So when Halloween came around and she had no one to trick-or-treat with, I finally caved. I called my ex-husband and asked if his stepkids could come over to play with her, since they were all around the same age. "Yes, of course they can. How many nights? 1, 2? His tone was disturbingly upbeat. Just 1 night. Okay, perfect, I'll drop them off right now." When he dropped them off, it was the first time I had seen Kyle in months, but I didn't want to confuse Lily, so I didn't tell her he was driving. This was made even easier by the fact that he didn't come to the front door, just drove away the second they arrived. But I didn't care. It was the first time I saw Lily get along with kids her age so well. At the end of the night, they poured their candy onto the living room floor, sorting through piles of chocolate and lollipops. They traded their favorite brands, and didn't even fight once. I expected Kyle to come the next day to collect them, but he never did. Didn't even bother to text or call. But turns out they all went to the same school as Lily, so I just incorporated them as part of my routine, because seeing how happy it made Lily meant it was worth it. Plus, I knew they liked us. Whenever I'd pick them up from school, they all, Lily and her step-siblings, would rush over to the car and wave school projects in my face. "Look what I made! Look what I made!" They'd shout at the top of their lungs. But after 3 nights of zero contact from Kyle, he finally picked them up. Again, he didn't come to the door, just parked in the front garden and texted me the words, "I'm outside." They hugged me super tight for almost 5 minutes straight before I could successfully maneuver them into the front garden. That night, Lily went to sleep with a smile on her face, and I knew I did good. But Kyle disagreed, because the next morning he called me. "What the F what you were thinking being so good to my kids? I know you're trying to steal them. If you think kindness is stealing, I think that says more about you than me," I responded before hanging up. I placed my hand on my chest and took a deep breath. I was relieved Kyle was out of my home, out of Lily's home. But my relief was short-lived, because 3 days later, I got a knock on the door. Except it wasn't Kyle. It was CPS. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint, claiming my daughter was living in unsafe conditions, that I was hoarding children. I looked the social worker up and down, 4-inch-long acrylics, a short skirt, lip filler, very young. I braced myself and tried to be patient with her. "Did you or did you not babysit 3 kids without a license for childcare?" Yes, but, and did you or did you not let them stuff their faces with unsafe amounts of candy on Halloween?" I went silent. "That's what I thought. Ma'am, you're gonna have to give me the next point of contact for your child to be rehoused. Alternatively, I can throw her into a foster home." My heart raced. I immediately offered my sister, who I knew would take care of her. I watched as she took my daughter away, her tiny hands reaching for me, screaming my name. I knew exactly who had made that call. And once everything was said and done, I planned on making Kyle pay. Because canceling on me or my daughter is one thing, but taking her away is another. The moment of separation is burned into my memory. Lily's confusion as I quickly packed a small bag for her. Her growing fear as she realized something was wrong. "Where am I going, Mommy? Why can't you come?" The woman's impatient sighs as I tried to explain to my 5-year-old that she needed to stay with Aunt Maggie for a little while. I knelt down and hugged Lily tightly, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling her small arms around my neck. "It's just for a little while, baby," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Like a vacation with Aunt Maggie. I'll come see you tomorrow. Promise?" Her lower lip trembled. "I promise. Be good for Aunt Maggie, okay?" I slipped Mr. Snuggles, her favorite stuffed rabbit, into her backpack when the woman wasn't looking. As they walked to the car, Lily kept looking back at me, her expression changing from confusion to fear as the distance between us grew. When the woman opened the car door, reality seemed to hit Lily all at once. She broke free and ran back toward me, screaming, "Mommy!" at the top of her lungs. I started toward her, but the woman caught her first, lifting her struggling body with surprising strength. "This will go in my report," she said coldly, carrying my screaming child to the car. I stood frozen on the porch, tears streaming down my face as the blue sedan pulled away. Lily's pale face appeared in the back window, her small hand pressed against the glass, growing smaller and smaller until the car turned the corner and disappeared. The moment they were gone, I collapsed onto the porch steps, my whole body shaking. The pancakes were still burning inside, filling the house with acrid smoke, but I couldn't bring myself to move. All I could think about was Lily's terrified face as she was taken away from me. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I forced myself to stand. I needed to call Maggie. to make sure Lily arrived safely. I needed to find a lawyer, and I needed to figure out what the hell Kyle had done. As I reached for my phone, a terrible thought struck me. What if they weren't taking Lily to Maggie at all? What if that woman wasn't really from CPS? I called Maggie immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. "Hey sis, what's up?" Maggie answered casually. "Is Lily there?" I demanded, unable to hide the panic in my voice. "What? Number, why would she be here?" My blood turned to ice. I quickly explained what had happened, my words tumbling over each other in my rush to get them out. "That doesn't sound right," Maggie said, her voice now sharp with concern. "CPS doesn't operate that way. They don't just show up and take kids without documentation." "I know, but she threatened foster care and I panicked and—" My voice broke. "I'm coming over right now," Maggie said firmly, "and I'm calling the police on my way." The next hour was a blur of police officers, questions, and growing horror as I realized what had happened. The officers confirmed what Maggie suspected. Legitimate CPS workers don't operate the way the woman had. They always provide proper identification, documentation, and typically come with law enforcement if they're removing a child. "So someone just took my daughter?" I whispered, the reality of the situation crashing down on me. The officers exchanged glances. "We're treating this as a possible abduction," one said gently, "but given what you've told us about your ex-husband, it's likely she's with him or someone connected to him." They took down Kyle's information and promised to send officers to his home immediately. In the meantime, they advised me to stay by the phone in case the kidnappers— I couldn't bear to use that word for whoever had taken Lily— made contact. Maggie stayed with me, making calls to everyone we knew who might have information about Kyle's whereabouts. I paced the living room, jumping at every sound, praying for the phone to ring with news about my daughter. Finally, around 8 p.m., my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered, my voice shaking. "Mrs. Harris? This is Officer Daniels. We've located your daughter." My knees gave out, and I sank to the floor. "Is she okay? Where is she?" "She's fine. She's at your sister Margaret's apartment. Apparently the woman dropped her off there about an hour ago." Relief flooded through me, so intense I could barely speak. Can I go get her?" "We'd like you to come to the station first. We have some questions about your ex-husband." The next day, I drove to my sister's place to see Lily. Maggie lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from my house. Not ideal, but at least Lily was with family and not in foster care. The drive to Maggie's apartment felt endless. Every red light was an eternity, every slow driver an obstacle between me and my child. I kept replaying the previous day's events in my mind, trying to make sense of what had happened. The fake CPS worker, the threats, the way Lily had been taken from me. When I pulled into Maggie's apartment complex, I barely remembered to put the car in park before jumping out. I took the stairs 2 at a time, too impatient to wait for the elevator, and knocked frantically on Maggie's door. When I got there, Lily ran to me and wrapped her little arms around my legs. "Mommy, are you taking me home now?" Her hopeful eyes nearly broke me. The moment the door opened, Lily launched herself at me, her small body colliding with mine with surprising force. I dropped to my knees, wrapping my arms around her, breathing in her familiar scent. She was wearing the same clothes from yesterday, her hair tangled and uncombed, but she was safe. She was here. "Oh baby, I missed you so much," I whispered, pressing kisses to the top of her head, her cheeks, her forehead. I held her at arm's length, examining her carefully for any signs of harm or distress. Besides looking tired, she seemed physically fine. I knelt down and smoothed her hair. "Not yet, sweetie. You're going to stay with Aunt Maggie a little longer while Mommy fixes some things." Her face fell, and I felt like the worst mother in the world. Lily's face crumpled at my words. "But why? Did I do something bad?" No, sweetheart," I rushed to assure her. "You didn't do anything wrong. This is all grown-up stuff that has nothing to do with you." She looked unconvinced, her lower lip trembling slightly. "The lady said you were in trouble, that you were a bad mommy." Anger flared in my chest at the thought of someone saying such things to my child. "That lady was wrong, Lily. Sometimes grown-ups say things that aren't true. Then why can't I come home?" Her voice was small, confused. I struggled to find an explanation that wouldn't frighten her further. "Remember when we read that book about the little bear who had to stay with his grandma while his mom fixed their house after the storm? This is kind of like that. I need to fix some things at home, and then you can come back." Maggie gave me a sympathetic look over Lily's head. She'd been amazing through all this, rearranging her work schedule and converting her home office into a bedroom for Lily. Maggie had transformed her small home office into a cozy space for Lily, with a twin air mattress covered in colorful sheets, a small lamp shaped like a unicorn, and some of Lily's favorite books that she'd picked up from my house earlier that day. She'd even bought a new stuffed animal, a fluffy pink cat, that Lily was already clutching tightly. "Any updates?" Maggie asked when Lily went to play with her toys. I shook my head. "I'm meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. This whole thing is insane. That CPS worker was totally unprofessional. I'm not even sure she was legitimate." "What do you mean?" "The way she was dressed, how she acted, it just seemed off. And she didn't leave me any paperwork or contact information. No case number, no business card, nothing." Maggie's eyes widened. "You think Kyle set this up? Who else would do this? He accused me of trying to steal his kids just because I was nice to them. And then 3 days later, CPS shows up? That's not a coincidence." I spent the rest of the day with Lily, trying to keep things normal. We colored, watched her favorite cartoon, and I read her 3 bedtime stories. When it was time for me to leave, she clung to me, sobbing. It took everything I had to pry her little fingers from my shirt and walk out the door. The separation was agonizing. Lily's cries followed me down the hallway, piercing straight through my heart. In the elevator, I leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe through the pain. A part of me wanted to run back, grab Lily, and take her home regardless of the consequences. But I knew that would only make things worse in the long run. In the car, I allowed myself 5 minutes to fall apart completely. I sobbed, pounding the steering wheel in frustration and fear. Then I wiped my eyes, took a deep breath, and started the engine. I had a lawyer to meet in the morning and a battle to prepare for. Kyle had declared war, and I intended to win. The next morning, I met with a lawyer named Diana Chen. She came highly recommended by a coworker who'd gone through a nasty divorce. Her office was small but professional, and she listened carefully as I explained everything that had happened. I arrived at Diana's office 20 minutes early, too anxious to sit at home waiting. The office was in a converted Victorian house, with creaky wooden floors and tall windows that let in streams of morning sunlight. The waiting room was painted a calming sage green, with comfortable chairs and current magazines neatly arranged on a coffee table. Despite the pleasant surroundings, I couldn't relax, constantly checking my phone for messages from Maggie about Lily. Diana herself was not what I expected. In her early 40s, she was petite with short black hair styled in a practical bob. She wore simple black-framed glasses and a navy pantsuit that looked expensive but not flashy. Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine but professional. "Let me get this straight," Diana said when I finished. "A supposed CPS worker showed up at your door, made accusations about hoarding children and Halloween candy, and removed your daughter without providing any documentation or following proper procedures." "Yes, she gave me the choice of naming a guardian or having Lily put in foster care. I was scared, so I named my sister." Diana frowned. "That's not how CPS operates. They don't just remove children without substantial evidence of immediate danger, and they certainly don't present themselves like you've described. They follow strict protocols and always provide documentation." My stomach dropped. "So you think she wasn't really from CPS? I think we need to verify that immediately. I'm going to call the local CPS office right now." Diana put the call on speaker. After navigating through several automated menus, she finally reached a supervisor named Marcus. She explained the situation, and I watched her face grow increasingly grim. "I see," she said. "Thank you for checking. We'll be in touch if we need anything else." She hung up and looked at me. "There's no record of a CPS case opened against you, no complaint filed, and no authorized removal of your daughter." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "So someone impersonated a CPS worker to take my child? Fortunately, your sister has her, which is good, but someone impersonated a government official to intimidate you into giving up custody. That's a serious crime." "Kyle," I whispered. "It has to be Kyle. Possibly. Or someone working for him. Either way, we need to act fast. I'm going to file an emergency petition to restore custody and report this to the police." I left Diana's office with a mix of hope and terror. On one hand, this proved I'd been set up. On the other, the realization that Kyle would go this far scared me to death. What else was he capable of? The weight of Kyle's betrayal settled heavily on my shoulders as I walked to my car. This wasn't just about him being a bad father or an unreliable ex-husband anymore. This was something far more sinister. A deliberate attempt to take my child away using deception and fear. The man I had once loved, once trusted enough to father my child, had orchestrated this cruel scheme. As I drove home, memories of our early days together flashed through my mind. Kyle's charming smile when we first met at a friend's barbecue, the way he'd surprised me with flowers for no reason, his excitement when we found out I was pregnant with Lily. Had that all been an act? Or had something changed him so fundamentally that he was now capable of this kind of malice? I thought about Lily, confused and separated from her home, her routine, her sense of security. All because Kyle couldn't stand the idea that his stepchildren might have enjoyed spending time with me. All because his ego was more important than his daughter's well-being. By the time I reached my house, my sadness had hardened into resolve. I would fight with everything I had to protect Lily and bring her home where she belonged. And I would make sure Kyle faced consequences for what he'd done. The police took my report but seemed skeptical at first. The officer kept asking if I was sure it wasn't a legitimate CPS worker. I described the woman's appearance again, the acrylics, the short skirt, the lip filler, and explained the lack of proper documentation. He finally agreed to look into it, but I could tell he wasn't treating it as urgently as I'd hoped. The police station was busy when I arrived, officers moving quickly between desks, phones ringing constantly. I was directed to a desk in the corner where Officer Reynolds, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes, took my statement. He typed slowly as I spoke, occasionally asking me to repeat details. "And you're certain this woman wasn't from CPS?" he asked for what felt like the third time. "Yes," I said, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. "I've confirmed with the actual CPS office that there's no case against me. This woman took my daughter under false pretenses." Officer Reynolds sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Look, Mrs. Harris, I understand you're upset, but are you sure this isn't just a misunderstanding? Maybe your ex-husband filed a complaint with a different office, or a different office?" I interrupted. "Is that how CPS works? Multiple offices that don't communicate with each other, and they send workers dressed like they're going to a club to remove children without proper documentation?" My voice had risen, drawing glances from nearby desks. Officer Reynolds held up a placating hand. All right, we'll look into it. But I have to be honest, if your daughter is with your sister, and she's safe, this isn't going to be our highest priority." I leaned forward, my hands flat on his desk. "Someone impersonated a government official to take my child. That's a felony, and my ex-husband is almost certainly behind it. I need you to take this seriously." Something in my tone must have gotten through to him. He nodded slowly. "We'll send someone to interview your ex-husband today, and I'll file a report about the impersonation. But in the meantime, my advice is to work through the courts to get your daughter back officially." It wasn't the response I'd hoped for, but it was something. I left the station feeling slightly better, knowing at least some official action was being taken. When I got home, there was a large manila envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a formal-looking document, a petition for full custody of Lily, filed by Kyle. He was claiming I was an unfit mother, citing the CPS investigation as evidence. I stood in my driveway, staring at the papers in disbelief. The petition was dated just one day after the fake CPS worker had taken Lily. Kyle had clearly been preparing this move in advance. The allegations were outrageous. Neglect, unsafe living conditions, moral turpitude, whatever that meant, and most bizarrely, child hoarding, presumably referring to the 3 days I'd watched his stepchildren. My hands shook with anger as I read through the document. Kyle had signed an affidavit swearing that all the allegations were true, that he was concerned for Lily's safety in my care. The same Kyle who had missed countless visitations, who had chosen his new family over his daughter again and again. The petition requested an emergency hearing to grant Kyle temporary custody while the court investigated the claims. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. He was moving fast, trying to legitimize his scheme before I could expose it. I called Diana immediately. "He's using his own scam against me." "This actually helps our case," she said calmly. "It connects him directly to the fake CPS visit. The timing is too convenient." He filed this petition just days after the incident. 2 days later, I was served with official court papers. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following week. Kyle was moving fast, trying to legitimize his scheme before we could expose it. The process server who delivered the papers was a young man who looked uncomfortable with his task. He mumbled an apology as he handed me the envelope, then hurried back to his car without meeting my eyes. I appreciated his humanity. At least someone in this process recognized how painful this was. Diana advised me to gather character references and documentation of my parenting. I reached out to neighbors, co-workers, Lily's teachers, anyone who could vouch for me. Most were happy to help, shocked that my fitness as a mother was even being questioned. My neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy, who had watched Lily occasionally when she was younger, wrote a beautiful letter describing how attentive and loving I was. Lily's kindergarten teacher, Ms. Wilson, provided a detailed account of my involvement in Lily's education, attending every parent-teacher conference, volunteering for class activities, always ensuring Lily's homework was complete. My boss wrote about how I balanced work responsibilities with parenting, often taking calls during my lunch break so I could leave on time to pick up Lily from school. I also gathered practical evidence, photos of our home showing a clean, child-friendly environment, Lily's medical records demonstrating regular checkups and vaccinations, receipts from activities I'd enrolled her in, from swimming lessons to children's museum memberships. Diana helped me organize everything into a compelling narrative of a dedicated single mother doing her best for her child. "The judge needs to see the contrast," she explained. "Your consistent presence in Lily's life versus Kyle's sporadic involvement." The night before the hearing, I could barely sleep. I kept picturing Kyle's smug face when he thought he'd won. The thought of him raising my daughter made me physically ill. Lily deserved so much better. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if the judge believed Kyle's lies? What if I lost custody of Lily? How would I protect her if she was living with him full-time? Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went downstairs to review our case materials one more time, searching for any weakness Kyle might exploit. By morning, I was exhausted but determined. I showered, carefully applied makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes, and put on the conservative navy dress Diana had recommended. "We want you to look like exactly what you are," she'd said, "a responsible, professional mother." I called Maggie before leaving for the courthouse. "How's Lily this morning?" "She's good," Maggie assured me. "We're making pancakes shaped like hearts. She wants to know if you'll be bringing her home today." My throat tightened. Tell her I'm doing everything I can. "We're rooting for you, sis. Go get 'em." The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing hallways. I spotted Kyle and his new wife Tara immediately, sitting on a bench outside the courtroom. He was wearing a suit I'd never seen before, looking like the perfect concerned father. Tara was dressed conservatively, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. They were the picture of respectability. The courthouse was an imposing building of gray stone and polished marble, with high ceilings that made every footstep echo. Security was tight. I had to pass through metal detectors and have my bag searched before entering. The formal atmosphere only increased my anxiety, reminding me of the serious nature of what was at stake. I arrived 45 minutes early on Diana's advice, giving us time to review our strategy one last time. We sat in a quiet corner of the hallway, going over key points and potential questions the judge might ask. Diana was calm and focused, which helped steady my nerves. "Remember," she said, "stick to the facts. Don't let emotions overwhelm you, even if Kyle or his lawyer say things that upset you. The judge will be watching your demeanor as well as listening to your words." As we talked, I noticed Kyle and Tara arrive. They walked confidently down the hallway, looking like they'd stepped out of a catalog for perfect suburban families. Kyle had trimmed his beard and gotten a haircut. Tara wore a modest floral dress and sensible heels. They sat on a bench across from us, and Kyle immediately pulled out his phone, showing Tara something that made her smile and nod approvingly. Kyle smirked when he saw me. I ignored him and walked past, head held high. The smirk sent a wave of anger through me, but I remembered Diana's advice and kept my expression neutral. Inside the courtroom, I focused on controlling my breathing, trying to project an image of calm competence despite the storm of emotions inside me. Inside the courtroom, things moved quickly. Kyle's lawyer spoke first, painting me as some kind of unstable child collector who created unsafe conditions for Lily. He referenced the CPS investigation multiple times, careful to never explicitly state there had been an official removal. Kyle's lawyer was a tall man with silver hair and an expensive suit. He spoke with practiced confidence, his voice resonating through the courtroom. "Your Honor, my client has serious concerns about his daughter's welfare while in her mother's care. Recently, Child Protective Services was called to investigate alarming conditions in Ms. Harris's home." He went on to describe how I had hoarded children without proper authorization, allowed dangerous amounts of candy consumption, and created an unstable environment for Lily. He presented photos of my living room after Halloween night, showing candy wrappers and empty pizza boxes, evidence, he claimed, of my negligence. Furthermore, he continued, Ms. Harris has demonstrated erratic behavior, including attempting to alienate Mr. Harris's stepchildren from their parents. This pattern of behavior suggests she is not currently fit to be Lily's primary caregiver. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white as I listened to these distortions of reality. Diana placed a calming hand on my arm, reminding me to maintain my composure. When Diana's turn came, she was methodical and precise. She explained that there was no official CPS case, presented my spotless work record, and submitted letters from Lily's teachers praising my parenting. She also pointed out the suspicious timing of Kyle's custody petition immediately following the fake CPS visit. Diana approached the podium with quiet confidence. "Your Honor, what we have here is not a case of an unfit mother, but rather a disturbing attempt to manipulate the legal system through fraud and deception. She methodically dismantled Kyle's claims, starting with the alleged CPS investigation. We have confirmation from the county CPS office that no investigation was ever opened regarding Ms. Harris or her daughter. The person who came to Ms. Harris's home and removed Lily was not a legitimate CPS worker. Diana presented the letter from the CPS supervisor, along with a detailed timeline showing how quickly Kyle had filed for custody after the fake CPS visit. This suggests, Your Honor, that Mr. Harris was not responding to a legitimate concern about his daughter's welfare, but rather executing a premeditated plan to gain custody through deceptive means. She then addressed the child hoarding accusation directly. Ms. Harris agreed to watch Mr. Harris's stepchildren as a favor, at his specific request. She has provided text messages confirming this arrangement. Far from hoarding children, she was providing care that Mr. Harris himself requested and then abandoned, failing to pick up the children for 3 days without explanation. One by one, Diana countered each of Kyle's allegations with evidence and testimony supporting my fitness as a mother. She submitted the letters from Lily's teachers, neighbors, and my employer. She presented photos of our home showing a clean, safe environment. She detailed my consistent presence at Lily's school events, medical appointments, and activities. The judge, an older woman named Judge Harrington with sharp eyes, listened carefully to both sides. She seemed particularly interested when Diana mentioned the impersonation of a government official. Judge Harrington was a formidable presence on the bench. In her 60s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, she had a reputation for being fair but strict. Her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose as she reviewed the documents presented by both lawyers, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "These are serious allegations," she said. "Do you have proof this woman wasn't from CPS?" Diana presented the letter from the CPS supervisor confirming no case had been opened against me, and explained that proper removal procedures hadn't been followed. The judge frowned and turned to Kyle's lawyer. "Counselor, can you explain this discrepancy?" Kyle's lawyer stammered something about miscommunication, and suggested that perhaps I had misunderstood the situation. The judge didn't look convinced. So Kyle's lawyer's confidence faltered under Judge Harrington's direct questioning. "Your Honor, my client was informed by a third party about the CPS investigation. He was acting in good faith based on information he received." "And who was this third party?" the judge pressed. I don't have that information at this time, Your Honor." Judge Harrington's frown deepened. "So your client filed for emergency custody based on hearsay about a CPS investigation that doesn't exist in any official record?" "The circumstances were concerning enough that my client felt immediate action was necessary," the lawyer insisted, but his argument was clearly weakening. In the end, she ordered a full investigation by court-appointed evaluators. While she expressed concern about the suspicious circumstances, she ruled that Lily would stay primarily with Kyle for the time being, with me getting weekend visitation until the investigation was complete. It wasn't what I'd hoped for, but at least I hadn't lost completely. Judge Harrington removed her glasses and addressed the courtroom. "This case presents some troubling elements that require further investigation. I am ordering a full evaluation by court-appointed experts to assess the home environments and parenting capabilities of both parties." She turned to me with a sympathetic but firm expression. "Ms. Harris, while I find the circumstances surrounding your daughter's removal concerning, I cannot simply dismiss Mr. Harris's petition without proper investigation. Until the court evaluators complete their assessment, Lily will remain primarily in her father's custody." My heart sank, but then she continued. "However, Ms. Harris will have visitation every weekend from Friday afternoon until Sunday evening. These visits will be supervised initially, with the possibility of unsupervised visitation based on the supervisor's reports. It wasn't the outcome I'd hoped for, but it wasn't a complete loss either. At least I would see Lily regularly while the investigation proceeded." As we left the courtroom, Kyle approached me, his face twisted with anger. "This isn't over," he whispered. "You're right about that," I replied. Kyle's eyes were cold as he leaned close, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what I'm capable of. By the time this is over, Lily will be calling Tara mom." The threat sent a chill down my spine, but I refused to show fear. Unlike you, I'm actually thinking about what's best for Lily, and that's certainly not being raised by someone who would use her as a pawn in some twisted game. Kyle's jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might make a scene right there in the courthouse hallway, but Tara appeared at his side, placing a restraining hand on his arm. "Come on, Kyle, let's go get Lily." As they walked away, Diana joined me. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing important," I replied, not wanting to dwell on his threats. "Just Kyle being Kyle." Diana gave me a searching look, but didn't press further. "This is just round one," she assured me. "We've planted seeds of doubt about Kyle's story. The court evaluators will dig deeper, and the truth will come out." I nodded, trying to hold on to hope. But as I walked out of the courthouse alone, knowing Kyle was on his way to pick up my daughter, I couldn't help feeling that I'd failed Lily somehow. The thought of her living primarily with Kyle, even temporarily, filled me with dread. The first weekend visitation was heartbreaking. Kyle dropped Lily off at the supervised visitation center looking disheveled. Her hair was tangled, her clothes didn't match, and she seemed subdued. Not at all like my normally energetic daughter. The visitation center was a depressing place. A converted office space with beige walls and fluorescent lighting. The waiting area had worn couches and outdated magazines, with toys that had seen better days scattered around a small play area. A sign on the wall listed rules in bold red letters. No discussing court cases with children. No negative comments about other parent. No gifts without prior approval. I arrived 30 minutes early, too anxious to wait at home. The center supervisor, Brenda, gave me a brief orientation, explaining that she would be present during the visit to observe and take notes, but would try to be as unobtrusive as possible. "Just try to relax and enjoy your time with your daughter," she advised. "Pretend I'm not even here." Easier said than done. The knowledge that every interaction would be observed and potentially used in court made it hard to be natural. When Kyle arrived with Lily, my heart sank. In just a week, she looked different. Her usually neat appearance was gone. Her hair was unbrushed, slouched, her shirt was on backwards, and her mismatched socks were falling down around her ankles. But worse than her appearance was her demeanor. My normally chatty, energetic child was quiet, her shoulders slumped, her eyes downcast. "Lily, honey, are you okay?" I asked, kneeling to her level. She nodded but wouldn't meet my eyes. Kyle barely acknowledged me, simply signing the check-in form and telling Brenda he'd be back in 3 hours. As he turned to leave, I noticed Lily watching him go with an anxious expression, as if afraid he wouldn't return. Once Kyle was gone, I tried to engage Lily in play. The center had toys, books, and art supplies available, but Lily showed little interest in any of them. She answered my questions with one-word responses, her usual enthusiasm nowhere to be seen. The supervisor, a middle-aged woman named Brenda, watched from across the room as we played with toys and colored pictures. Lily barely spoke the whole time. Brenda sat in a corner with a clipboard, occasionally making notes. Her presence was a constant reminder of the abnormality of the situation, that I needed supervision to be with my own child, as if I were some kind of danger to her. After about an hour of stilted interaction, Lily finally began to relax slightly. She agreed to color a picture, choosing a princess coloring book from the center's collection. As she carefully filled in the princess's dress with purple crayon, I noticed how thin her wrists looked. "Are you eating okay at Daddy's house?" I asked casually. Lily shrugged. "Sometimes I'm not hungry." "What kinds of things does Daddy make for dinner?" She thought for a moment. "Mostly cereal, or sometimes we get McDonald's." I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was furious. Lily had always been a good eater, enjoying the balanced meals I prepared. The thought of her subsisting on sugary cereal and fast food made my blood boil. When our 3 hours were up, Kyle was late picking her up. Brenda made a note of it in her file, which gave me a small sense of satisfaction. Kyle arrived 20 minutes after the scheduled end time, offering no apology for his tardiness. Lily immediately became subdued again when he entered the room, putting down the book we'd been reading and standing up as if on command. "Ready to go, kiddo?" Kyle asked, not looking at me. Lily nodded silently and went to collect her backpack, the same one I'd packed for her the day the fake CPS worker took her, now looking considerably more worn and dirty. "Bye, Mommy," she said quietly, giving me a quick hug before retreating to Kyle's side. "I'll see you next weekend, sweetheart," I promised, fighting back tears. "I love you so much." "Love you too," she whispered, then followed Kyle out the door. As they left, Brenda approached me. She seemed to warm up as the visit progressed, she observed, her tone professional but kind. "She's not herself," I said, unable to keep the worry from my voice. Brenda nodded thoughtfully. "I'll note that in my report, and the father's lateness as well." It was small comfort, but at least someone else was witnessing what was happening to my daughter. This pattern continued for weeks. Each visit, Lily seemed more withdrawn. She'd lost weight, and once I noticed a bruise on her arm. When I gently asked about it, she just said she fell. Brenda wrote that down too. By our third visit, the changes in Lily were becoming more pronounced. Her clothes hung loosely on her frame, and dark circles had appeared under her eyes. She moved more slowly, without the boundless energy that had always characterized her. When I brought snacks, approved in advance by the center, she ate ravenously, as if she hadn't had a proper meal in days. During our fourth visit, I noticed a large bruise on her upper arm, peeking out from under her t-shirt sleeve. My heart raced at the sight, but I kept my voice casual, remembering the center's rules about not upsetting the child. "That's a big bruise, Lily. What happened?" She pulled her sleeve down quickly. "I fell." "Where did you fall?" "On the stairs." Her voice was flat, rehearsed. I glanced at Brenda, who was watching our interaction closely. She made a note on her clipboard, her expression giving nothing away. Meanwhile, Kyle's social media was a parade of happy family photos. Him with Tara and her kids Max and Emma at the zoo, at restaurants, at the beach. Lily was rarely in these pictures, and when she was always off to the side, not smiling. Each night after putting Lily back in Kyle's care, I would torture myself by checking his social media accounts. The contrast between what I was seeing in our visits and what he portrayed online was stark. There was Kyle at a water park, his arm around Max as they posed in front of a giant slide. There was Tara and Emma making cookies in a spotless kitchen. There were family dinners at restaurants, movie outings, trips to the local fair. Lily appeared in perhaps 1 out of every 10 photos, and when she did, the difference was striking. While Max and Emma beamed at the camera, Lily's smiles never reached her eyes. In group shots, she stood slightly apart from the others, as if not quite part of the family. In one particularly painful image, Kyle was helping Emma onto a carousel horse, while Lily stood alone in the background, watching. I saved screenshots of every post, sending them to Diana as evidence of the disparity in how Kyle treated Lily versus his stepchildren. "This could be useful," Diana agreed. "It shows a pattern of emotional neglect, even if it's not outright abuse." During our fourth visit, Lily finally opened up a little. "Daddy gets mad a lot," she whispered while coloring a picture of a unicorn. My heart raced, but I kept my voice casual. "What happens when Daddy gets mad?" She shrugged. "I have to go to my room for a long time. Sometimes I don't get dinner." I wanted to scream, but with Brenda watching, I just nodded and told Lily she could always talk to me about anything. I reported what she said to Diana immediately after the visit. The moment Lily mentioned Kyle's anger, I felt a surge of protective rage that I carefully concealed. I kept coloring the mane of my own unicorn, making my movements deliberate and calm despite my racing heart. "That must be scary when Daddy gets mad," I said gently. Lily nodded, pressing her crayon so hard against the paper that the tip broke. "He yells really loud, louder than the TV. Does he yell at everyone or just at you?" She thought for a moment. "Mostly me. Sometimes Max if he spills something. Not Emma much. Never Tara." "And you said sometimes you don't get dinner? What about breakfast and lunch?" "If it's a school day, I get breakfast at school," she said. "But on weekends sometimes I just stay in my room all day." The casual way she described this neglect broke my heart. as if being sent to bed without dinner and confined to her room for extended periods was normal discipline rather than emotional abuse. Does anyone check on you when you're in your room? I asked. Emma sometimes sneaks me crackers, Lily said, a small smile appearing briefly. She says it's our secret. I made a mental note to thank Emma if I ever got the chance. At least someone in that household was showing kindness to my daughter. You know you can always tell me anything, right? I said, meeting Lily's eyes. Even if it's something scary or something you think might get someone in trouble. I will always listen, and I will always believe you. Lily nodded solemnly. I know, Mommy. As our visit ended and Kyle arrived to pick her up, I watched Lily's entire demeanor change. Her shoulders hunched, her gaze dropped to the floor, and she became almost robotic in her movements, a child trying to be invisible to avoid attracting negative attention. Document everything, Diana advised. We need to establish a pattern of behavior. After the visit, I called Diana from my car, too upset to wait until I got home. I recounted everything Lily had told me, my voice shaking with anger and fear. This is significant, Diana said. It's the first direct disclosure from Lily about mistreatment. Brenda's notes will be important here. She's a mandated reporter, so if she believes there's abuse or neglect occurring, she's legally obligated to report it. Is it enough to get Lily back? I asked desperately. Diana sighed. Not yet. Without physical evidence of abuse or more specific disclosures, the court might view this as normal discipline that you're interpreting negatively because of the custody dispute. But it's a start. Keep encouraging Lily to talk to you, and make sure Brenda documents everything. I hung up feeling frustrated but slightly more hopeful. At least Lily was starting to open up. At least someone was listening. It wasn't enough, but it was something to build on. 2 months into this nightmare, something unexpected happened. I was at the grocery store when I literally bumped carts with a woman about my age. She apologized, then did a double take. It was a Tuesday evening, and I was mechanically going through the motions of grocery shopping, my mind preoccupied with worry about Lily. I turned down the cereal aisle without looking, and collided with another cart coming from the opposite direction. I'm so sorry, I said automatically, looking up to see a blonde woman in her early 40s. She was stylishly dressed in jeans and a floral blouse, with reading glasses perched on top of her head. Are you Lily's mom? She asked. I tensed, immediately suspicious. Yes. Who are you? I'm Vanessa, Max and Emma's grandmother. Kyle's stepkids? My guard dropped slightly. Oh, nice to meet you. She looked around nervously. Can we talk somewhere? I've been hoping to run into you. The request caught me off guard. My first instinct was caution. Was this some trick of Kyle's? But something in Vanessa's expression seemed genuine, a mixture of concern and determination that resonated with me. There's a coffee shop next door, I suggested, still wary but curious. We went to the coffee shop next door. Vanessa explained that she watched the kids sometimes when Kyle and Tara were busy. She'd noticed changes in her grandchildren's behavior since they moved in with him. The coffee shop was quiet on a weekday evening, just a few students with laptops and an elderly couple in the corner. Vanessa and I chose a table far from the other customers, where we could speak privately. She seemed nervous, repeatedly checking her phone and glancing toward the door. I've been wanting to talk to you for weeks, she began, her voice low. Tara's my daughter. I love her, but she doesn't always make the best choices in men. I nodded, unsure where this was going but willing to listen. They're anxious all the time, afraid of making mistakes, she said. And they talk about Lily a lot. They miss her. They say she cries a lot. Kyle doesn't let me see her except for supervised visits, I explained. I'm fighting for custody, but it's complicated. Vanessa nodded. My daughter won't listen to me. She thinks Kyle is perfect, but I've seen how he treats those kids when he thinks no one's watching. He's cruel. She pulled out her phone and showed me a video she'd secretly taken. It showed Kyle screaming at Max for spilling a drink, calling him stupid and worthless. My blood ran cold. The video was shaky, clearly taken surreptitiously, but the audio was clear enough. Kyle's face was contorted with rage as he loomed over Max, who couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Are you stupid? Are you completely worthless? Kyle shouted, his voice venomous. Clean it up, now! Max scrambled to wipe up the spilled juice, his small hands shaking so badly he kept dropping the paper towels. I felt sick watching it, recognizing the same explosive anger I'd experienced during our marriage, but seeing it directed at a child, not even his own child, but a boy he'd chosen to become a stepfather to, was horrifying. Has he ever hit them? I asked. Not that I've seen, but the emotional abuse is bad enough. She hesitated. I think he locks Lily in her room. I heard Max telling Emma they need to sneak her food. I felt sick. Can I have a copy of that video? That's why I wanted to find you. I'll send you everything I have. Vanessa became my unexpected ally. Over the next few weeks, she sent me photos and videos documenting Kyle's behavior. Nothing showed physical abuse, but the emotional abuse was clear. In one video, Kyle was ignoring Lily at the dinner table while lavishing attention on his stepkids. In another, he was yelling at her for not cleaning up toys that weren't even hers. Vanessa and I established a system of communication that wouldn't raise Kyle's suspicions. We used a messaging app that allowed messages to be automatically deleted after being read, and we never contacted each other around times when I had visitation with Lily, in case Kyle was monitoring my activities. The evidence she provided was disturbing. A photo of Lily's bedroom at Kyle's house, a spare room with just a mattress on the floor, no toys, no decorations, nothing to indicate a child lived there. A video of a family dinner where Kyle served ice cream to Max and Emma while telling Lily she hadn't earned dessert. An audio recording of Kyle telling Lily that I didn't really want her back, that I was only fighting for custody to hurt him. Each new piece of evidence strengthened my case but also deepened my anguish. My daughter was suffering daily psychological abuse, and I was powerless to stop it immediately. The legal system moved slowly, requiring documentation and due process, while Lily endured Kyle's cruelty. Diana said it wasn't enough for an emergency custody change, but it would help our case. We needed more. The problem, Diana explained during one of our meetings, is that emotional abuse is harder to prove than physical abuse. There are no bruises or broken bones for a doctor to document, and courts are reluctant to make sudden changes in custody without overwhelming evidence. So Lily just has to endure ignore this until we have enough proof? I asked, frustrated. Unfortunately, yes. But we're building a strong case. Each piece of evidence shows a pattern of behavior that the court can't ignore forever. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During one of our supervised visits, Lily slipped a folded piece of paper into my pocket when Brenda wasn't looking. I didn't discover it until I got home. It was a crayon drawing of her bedroom at Kyle's house. She'd drawn a lock on the outside of the door, and herself crying inside. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, she'd written, "Help me, mommy." It was during our 6th supervised visit that it happened. Lily and I were playing a board game, with Brenda observing from her usual spot across the room. When I got up to get Lily a cup of water, she quickly stood too, giving me a brief hug. I felt her small hand slip something into my jacket pocket, but her face gave nothing away. "I love you, mommy," she said, loud enough for Brenda to hear. "I love you too, sweetie," I replied, wondering what she had given me but knowing better than to check while under observation. The rest of the visit passed normally, with Lily seeming slightly more relaxed than usual. When Kyle picked her up, she went without protest, but gave me a meaningful look over her shoulder as they left. It wasn't until I got home and emptied my pockets that I found the folded piece of construction paper. My hands trembled as I carefully opened it, revealing a child's drawing done in crayon. The image was simple but heartbreaking, a small stick figure with tears falling from its face, inside a room with a large lock drawn on the outside of the door. In the corner, Lily had drawn a bed that was just a rectangle on the floor, matching Vanessa's description of her room. But it was the words at the bottom that broke me completely. In the uneven handwriting of a 5-year-old, "Help me, mommy." The plea was underlined 3 times. I called Diana immediately. She filed an emergency motion with the court and reported the information to CPS, the real CPS this time. They opened an investigation, but Kyle was slippery. By the time they visited, the lock was gone. He claimed Lily must have imagined it or made it up for attention. The children were interviewed separately, but they all gave the same answers, clearly rehearsed. "Daddy is nice. We're happy. We have fun." Even Lily. Diana arrived at my house within an hour of my call, examining the drawing carefully. "This is significant," she said. "It's direct evidence from Lily herself about her living conditions." She took photos of the drawing from multiple angles, then placed it in a protective sleeve. "I'll file an emergency motion first thing tomorrow morning, and we need to report this to CPS immediately." The CPS investigation moved quickly, but not quickly enough. They sent an investigator to Kyle's house the next day, but as Diana had warned me might happen, Kyle had been prepared. The investigator reported no lock on Lily's door, and a room that, while sparse, had basic furnishings appropriate for a child. When the investigator interviewed the children, their responses were suspiciously similar, as if they'd been told exactly what to say. Even Lily, normally so honest, repeated the same phrases as Max and Emma. "Daddy is nice. We're happy. We have fun." I knew Kyle had coached them, threatened them. The CPS report was inconclusive. They couldn't substantiate the allegations of abuse or neglect, but they couldn't rule them out either. The investigator noted that the children's identical responses raised some concerns about coaching, but without physical evidence of the lock or other mistreatment, they couldn't take action. Our court date for the final custody hearing was approaching. I felt like I was running out of time and options. Kyle seemed untouchable, always one step ahead. He'd even managed to get Lily's teacher to write a letter saying she was adjusting well to her new home situation. The weeks leading up to the final hearing were some of the most stressful of my life. I continued my supervised visits with Lily, watching helplessly as she grew thinner and more withdrawn. Brenda's reports noted her concerns about Lily's weight loss and subdued behavior, but without direct evidence of abuse, there was little the court would do before the hearing. Diana and I worked tirelessly, gathering every scrap of evidence we could find. Vanessa continued to send photos and videos when possible, though Kyle had become more careful, rarely displaying his worst behavior when others were present. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every moment away from Lily felt like torture, knowing she was in Kyle's house, possibly locked in her room, possibly going hungry. The powerlessness was overwhelming. Kyle, meanwhile, seemed confident. He'd hired a new lawyer, more expensive and aggressive than his previous one, and this attorney had a reputation for winning difficult custody cases through intimidation and procedural maneuvers. They filed motion after motion, to exclude Vanessa's videos as illegally obtained, to dismiss Lily's drawing as coached, to limit my visitation further based on vague allegations of parental alienation. Diana fought back against each motion, but the legal battles were draining both emotionally and financially. I'd already depleted my savings and had started using credit cards to pay Diana's fees, but I would have sold everything I owned if it meant getting Lily back. Then, a week before the hearing, Vanessa called me in a panic. "Max is in the hospital. He fell down the stairs." The call came at 2 a.m., jolting me from a restless sleep. Vanessa's voice was tight with fear and anger. "Tara called me an hour ago," she explained. "She said Max fell down the stairs and hit his head. He's at Memorial Hospital. I'm on my way there now." "Do you think Kyle pushed him?" I asked, already getting dressed while holding the phone. "Tara says it was an accident, that Max was running in the house after bedtime, but..." Her voice trailed off. "But you don't believe it," I finished for her. "Number Max is afraid of the dark. He wouldn't be running around the house at night." And Tara sounded strange, like she was reading from a script. I rushed to the hospital, not sure if they'd let me in since I wasn't family. But Vanessa met me in the lobby and snuck me up to Max's room. He was asleep, his arm in a cast and bruises on his face. Memorial Hospital was a maze of sterile corridors and harsh fluorescent lighting. The pediatric ward was decorated with cheerful murals of animals and cartoon characters that seemed at odds with the serious atmosphere. Vanessa was waiting by the elevators, her face drawn with worry. "They're in room 312, she whispered. "Tara's there, but Kyle went home to be with the girls. If anyone asks, you're my sister." We slipped into Max's room quietly. The sight of him in the hospital bed made my stomach clench. He looked so small and vulnerable, his face a patchwork of bruises in various shades of purple and yellow. His right arm was encased in a blue cast, and a bandage covered a portion of his forehead. Machines beeped softly beside the bed, monitoring his vital signs. Tara was asleep in a chair by the window, her face puffy from crying. She didn't stir as we entered. "The doctor doesn't believe it was just a fall," Vanessa whispered. "There's a CPS investigator here now, talking to Tara." I waited in the hallway, not wanting to complicate things. After about an hour, a woman in a professional suit emerged from Max's room. She looked nothing like the fake CPS worker who'd come to my house. This woman was older, with short gray hair and sensible shoes. The investigator, Ms. Patel, was in her 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor and kind eyes. She carried a worn leather briefcase and had the weary but determined look of someone who had seen too many injured children, but hadn't lost her drive to protect them. Vanessa introduced me, explaining that I was Lily's mother and had concerns about Kyle's treatment of all the children. The investigator, Ms. Patel, listened carefully. "I can't discuss the details of this case," she said, "but I would be interested in hearing about your experiences with Mr. Harris." I told her everything: the fake CPS worker, the custody battle, Lily's drawing of the locked bedroom. Ms. Patel took notes and asked pointed questions. I spoke quietly but urgently, aware that we were in a public hallway where anyone might overhear. Ms. Patel listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed her expertise in child welfare cases. "And you have documentation of these allegations?" she asked when I finished. "Yes," I confirmed. "My lawyer has copies of everything: the drawing, the videos from Max and Emma's grandmother, the reports from the visitation supervisor." Ms. Patel nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like to see those materials, and I'd like to interview Lily separately from the other children. I'll be making an unannounced visit to the home," she said when I finished, "and I'd like to interview Lily separately." For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Someone was finally taking this seriously. The next day, Ms. Patel made her surprise visit during dinner time. She later told me what she found: Lily alone in her room while the rest of the family ate. The room was bare except for a mattress on the floor. No toys, no books, nothing a child should have. When questioned, Kyle claimed Lily was being punished for bad behavior, but Ms. Patel noted that the punishment seemed excessive and the room inappropriate for a child. Ms. Patel arrived at Kyle's house at 6:30 p.m., identifying herself as a CPS investigator and requesting entry to conduct a welfare check. Kyle initially tried to refuse, but Ms. Patel calmly informed him that she could return with police officers if necessary. He reluctantly let her in. The contrast between the main living areas and Lily's room was striking. The house was well furnished, with comfortable couches, a large TV, and family photos on the walls. The kitchen was modern, with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. Tara, Max, and Emma were seated at the dining table, eating what appeared to be a home-cooked meal, but Lily was nowhere to be seen. When Ms. Patel asked where she was, Kyle claimed she was in timeout for misbehaving. Ms. Patel insisted on seeing her immediately. Lily's room was at the end of a hallway, separated from the rest of the bedrooms. Unlike Max and Emma's rooms, which had colorful bedding, toys, and decorations, Lily's room contained only a mattress on the floor with a thin blanket, a small lamp, and a plastic bin with a few changes of clothes. The walls were bare, the floor uncarpeted. There was no evidence of toys, books, or any items that would normally be in a child's room. Lily was sitting on the mattress, her knees drawn up to her chest. She looked up when the door opened, her expression fearful, until she recognized Ms. Patel as a stranger, not Kyle. There was a plate on the floor beside her with a small portion of plain pasta. No sauce, no vegetables, none of the chicken the rest of the family was eating. She interviewed each child separately, away from Kyle and Tara. This time, without Kyle's intimidation, they told a different story. Max admitted that Kyle had pushed him down the stairs after he'd accidentally broken a glass. Emma confirmed that Kyle regularly locked Lily in her room for hours. And Lily, finally feeling safe enough to speak, told Ms. Patel about going to bed hungry and being called names. Ms. Patel conducted the interviews in her car, one child at a time, explaining that this was to ensure they felt comfortable speaking freely. She recorded each conversation with the children's permission. Max went first, initially repeating the rehearsed lines about his fall being an accident. But when Ms. Patel gently pressed, asking specific questions about what happened before he fell, his story began to change. "I was getting water," he admitted, his voice small, "and I dropped the glass. It broke really loud." "What happened then?" Ms. Patel asked. "Kyle got really mad. He said I was stupid and clumsy. He grabbed my arm really hard." Max touched his upper arm, where bruises in the shape of fingerprints were visible. "Then he pushed me, and I fell down the stairs." Emma's interview revealed a pattern of emotional abuse directed primarily at Lily. "Kyle says Lily is bad and has to stay in her room," she explained, "sometimes all day and all night. Me and Max sneak her food when Kyle and Mom aren't looking." "Is there a lock on Lily's door?" Ms. Patel asked. Emma nodded. "Kyle puts it on when he's really mad, but he took it off yesterday. He said some people might come to check and we shouldn't tell about the lock or we'd all be in big trouble." Lily's interview was the most heartbreaking. Once she understood that Ms. Patel was there to help, not punish, the words poured out of her. She described being locked in her room for days at a time, being given minimal food, being told that I didn't love her anymore and had abandoned her. "Daddy says I'm bad," she whispered. "He says that's why Mommy doesn't want me anymore, but I try to be good. I try really hard." The CPS report was damning. Kyle's perfect facade was cracking. Ms. Patel's report was thorough and unequivocal. She documented the inappropriate living conditions for Lily, the differential treatment compared to the other children, and the consistent accounts from all three children about Kyle's abusive behavior. She noted the physical evidence: Max's injuries inconsistent with an accidental fall, Lily's weight loss, the barren state of Lily's room compared to the rest of the house. Most damning was her assessment of Kyle himself. During her visit, he had become increasingly agitated and controlling, attempting to interrupt the children's interviews and making veiled threats about what would happen when she left. Ms. Patel documented his behavior as consistent with that of an abuser, charming to authorities but quickly revealing his true nature when challenged. The report recommended immediate removal of all three children from Kyle's home pending further investigation. Lily would be returned to my custody, while Max and Emma would stay with Vanessa until Tara could be assessed as a non-offending parent. But I knew the final battle was still ahead. As the court date approached, I gathered every scrap of evidence, every witness statement, every documentation of Kyle's neglect and abuse. Diana was confident. With the CPS report and all our evidence, the judge will have to rule in your favor. The day before the final hearing, Diana and I met for last-minute preparations. We spread documents across her conference table. The CPS report, Vanessa's videos and photos, Brenda's visitation notes, Lily's drawing, medical records showing Lily's weight loss, and statements from various witnesses including Lily's teacher, who had revised her assessment after being shown evidence of Lily's deterioration. We have a strong case, Diana assured me. Judge Harrington takes child welfare very seriously. Once she sees the CPS report and hears the testimony from Ms. Patel, I believe she'll grant you full custody. What about Kyle's lawyer? He's good at twisting things. He is, Diana acknowledged, but he can't change the facts. Max's injuries, Lily's weight loss, the conditions Ms. Patel documented, these are objective realities, not matters of interpretation. I nodded, trying to believe her. After months of watching Kyle manipulate the system, I was afraid to hope too much. But for Lily's sake, I had to stay strong and focused. Try to get some rest tonight, Diana advised as we finished. Tomorrow will be intense, but remember, we're fighting for Lily. Keep that at the center of everything. The day of the hearing arrived. I dressed carefully in a conservative blue dress, wanting to look like the responsible mother I was. Kyle showed up looking disheveled for once, dark circles under his eyes. Tara wasn't with him. I chose the blue dress deliberately. It was the color of stability and trustworthiness, according to Diana. I kept my makeup minimal and my jewelry simple, just small pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother. My hair was neatly styled in a low bun, professional and maternal. When I arrived at the courthouse, Diana was already waiting, her briefcase bulging with our evidence. She looked confident in her charcoal gray suit, her posture straight and determined. "Ready?" she asked as I approached. "As I'll ever be," I replied, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. We entered the courtroom together, and I immediately noticed Kyle sitting alone at the defendant's table. His usual polished appearance was gone. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and stubble darkened his jaw. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Where's Tara?" I whispered to Diana. "I don't know," she murmured back, but her absence speaks volumes. The hearing was intense. Kyle's lawyer tried to paint the CPS investigation as a misunderstanding, claiming the children had been coached to lie. He suggested I was behind it all, manipulating everyone to get revenge on Kyle. Kyle's lawyer was aggressive from the start, his voice booming through the courtroom as he tried to discredit the CPS report. "Your Honor, this investigation was clearly biased from the beginning." Ms. Patel approached the situation with preconceived notions based on hearsay from Ms. Harris and Mrs. Mitchell, the maternal grandmother of Mr. Harris's stepchildren. He argued that the children's statements were inconsistent and likely coached, that Max's injuries were indeed from an accidental fall, and that Lily's sparse room was simply a matter of different parenting styles, not neglect. Furthermore, he continued, we have evidence that Ms. Harris has been systematically alienating these children from their father, poisoning them against him with false allegations. But his argument seemed hollow, especially when compared to the mountain of evidence Diana was methodically presenting. Diana systematically dismantled his arguments. She presented the CPS report, Lily's drawing, Vanessa's videos, and testimony from Brenda about Lily's declining condition during our visits. She also called Ms. Patel to testify about what she'd found during her investigation. Diana's approach was calm and methodical, a stark contrast to the emotional tactics of Kyle's lawyer. She began by establishing the timeline of events, from the fake CPS worker to Ms. Patel's investigation, creating a clear narrative of Kyle's escalating behavior. She presented Lily's drawing, enlarged so the judge could clearly see the details, the lock on the door, the tears on the stick figure's face, the plea for help. She showed before and after photos of Lily, documenting her weight loss and the change in her demeanor over the months she'd been in Kyle's care. Vanessa's videos were particularly powerful. The courtroom fell silent as Kyle's voice filled the room, berating Max for a simple mistake, using language no child should ever hear. Judge Harrington's expression grew increasingly grave as the evidence mounted. Ms. Patel's testimony was the centerpiece of our case. She described in clinical detail the conditions she'd found in Kyle's home, the stark contrast between Lily's treatment and that of the other children, and the consistent accounts she'd received from all three children when interviewed separately. In my professional opinion, Ms. Patel concluded, the children in Mr. Harris's home were subjected to emotional abuse and neglect, with Lily Harris experiencing the most severe mistreatment. The conditions I observed were harmful to the children's physical and psychological well-being. The turning point came when Max's doctor testified. He stated unequivocally that Max's injuries were not consistent with a simple fall down the stairs. They indicated he had been pushed with significant force. Dr. Reynolds was a pediatric orthopedist with 20 years of experience. He spoke with quiet authority, using medical terminology, but explaining it clearly for the court. The fracture pattern on Max's arm is what we call a transverse fracture of the humerus, he explained, showing x-rays on a display screen. This type of break is caused by a direct force applied perpendicular to the bone, consistent with being pushed against a hard surface, not with the tumbling motion of a fall downstairs. He went on to describe the pattern of bruising on Max's body, pointing out that some bruises were in locations inconsistent with a fall. Particularly concerning are these bruises, he said, indicating marks on Max's upper arms. They are consistent with finger marks from being gripped tightly by an adult hand. Kyle's face went pale. His lawyer whispered urgently to him, but he just shook his head, looking defeated. As Dr. Reynolds continued his testimony, I glanced at Kyle. His composure was crumbling visibly. His face had lost all color, and a sheen of sweat had appeared on his forehead. He kept shaking his head at his lawyer's whispered comments, his eyes darting around the courtroom like a cornered animal. The judge didn't even need to retire to chambers to consider her decision. She awarded me full custody of Lily, with Kyle getting supervised visitation only after completing parenting classes and anger management. She also recommended that CPS continue their investigation regarding Kyle's stepchildren. Judge Harrington removed her glasses and looked directly at Kyle. Mr. Harris, the evidence presented today paints a disturbing picture of your behavior toward the children in your care. I find that you have engaged in a pattern of emotional abuse and neglect that has caused significant harm to your daughter and stepchildren. Her voice was stern but controlled as she continued. I am awarding full legal and physical custody of Lily Harris to her mother, effective immediately. You will be permitted supervised visitation only after completing court-approved parenting classes and anger management therapy, with a minimum of 6 months of documented participation and progress. She turned to me with a softer expression. Ms. Harris, you have demonstrated remarkable persistence in advocating for your daughter's welfare. The court commends your efforts to protect Lily while working within the legal system. Finally, she addressed the broader situation. I am also ordering that a copy of today's proceedings and all evidence be provided to Child Protective Services for their ongoing investigation regarding Max and Emma Mitchell. This court takes very seriously the welfare of all children, and the evidence suggests that they too may be at risk in Mr. Harris's presence. With a sharp rap of her gavel, it was done. Lily would come home to me today. That afternoon, I finally brought Lily home. She ran through the house, touching everything as if to make sure it was real. Ms. Patel personally escorted Lily from Kyle's house to mine, supervising as Lily packed her few belongings. When they arrived at my front door, Lily stood frozen for a moment, as if afraid to believe she was really coming home. Then she saw me and launched herself into my arms with a sob of relief. I get to stay forever, she kept asking. Forever and ever, I promised. Once Miss Patel left, Lily explored the house like it was her first time seeing it, running from room to room, touching her toys, her books, the familiar furniture. She opened the refrigerator and stared at the food inside, then looked at me with a question in her eyes. Are you hungry, sweetie? I asked. She nodded hesitantly. You can have anything you want, I told her, and you never have to ask permission to eat in this house. This is your home, and you're always allowed to eat when you're hungry. Her eyes widened, and for the first time in months, I saw a genuine smile spread across her face. That night, as I tucked her into her bed, her real bed, with her favorite stuffed animals and books, she looked up at me with serious eyes. Is Daddy going to take me away again? I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. No, honey, you're staying right here with me. I sat on the edge of her bed, my hand gently stroking her hair. Her room was exactly as she'd left it months ago. The lavender walls, the butterfly mobile hanging from the ceiling, the bookshelf filled with her favorite stories. I'd kept everything the same, waiting for her return. But what if he tries? She persisted, her small face creased with worry. The judge said you get to live with me now, I explained. And there are people watching to make sure Daddy follows the rules. He can only see you with a special helper there to make sure everything is okay. She seemed to consider this, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her blanket. Will I have to see him soon? Not until he takes some special classes to help him be a better daddy, I assured her. And only if you want to. She nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. Then her expression changed, becoming concerned again. What about Max and Emma? They're sad too. I didn't know what to tell her. CPS was investigating, but there were no guarantees. Some other grown-ups are helping them, I said finally. She seemed satisfied with that and drifted off to sleep. I sat watching her for a long time, grateful to have her back but worried about what Kyle might do next. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next morning, I opened my front door to find my yard covered in trash. Someone had dumped garbage all over my lawn and driveway during the night. There was no proof it was Kyle, but the message was clear. He wasn't done with me. The sight that greeted me when I opened the front door was shocking. Garbage was strewn everywhere. Fast food wrappers, empty beer cans, broken glass, even what looked like dirty diapers. Someone had clearly spent time collecting this trash and deliberately spreading it across my property for maximum effect. I quickly closed the door before Lily could see the mess. She was in the kitchen, happily eating the pancakes I'd made for her first breakfast back home. I didn't want anything to spoil this moment for her. I cleaned it up before Lily woke up and didn't call the police. I knew they wouldn't do anything without evidence, but I did install security cameras that day. After breakfast, I told Lily I needed to do some yard work and set her up with her favorite cartoon in the living room, where she couldn't see the front yard. Then I tackled the mess, working quickly to remove all traces of the vandalism before she noticed. As I filled bag after bag with trash, my neighbor Mrs. Abernathy came over to help. I saw a car drive by slowly around 2 a.m., she told me. Couldn't make out the model or license plate in the dark, but it stopped in front of your house for a few minutes. I thanked her for the information, but we both knew it wasn't enough to prove anything. Still, her help with the cleanup was invaluable, and by the time Lily came looking for me, the yard was back to normal. That afternoon, I researched home security systems and found one I could install myself, cameras that would record activity around the perimeter of my house and send alerts to my phone. I set them up strategically to cover all approaches to the house, paying particular attention to the front yard and driveway. The cameras proved useful when, 3 nights later, they caught Kyle sneaking around my backyard at 2 a.m. I called the police, and this time they took it seriously. Kyle was arrested for trespassing, and I got a restraining order against him. The alert from my security system woke me from a light sleep. Motion detected in the backyard. I grabbed my phone and watched in real time as a figure moved furtively along the side of my house, trying doorknobs and peering into windows. Even in the night vision video, I recognized Kyle's distinctive gait and build. I called 911 immediately, my voice shaking as I reported an intruder on my property. I have video confirmation that it's my ex-husband, I told the dispatcher. He's violating a custody order and attempting to break into my home. The police arrived within minutes, their silent approach catching Kyle by surprise as he tried to force open a window at the back of the house. The officers' flashlights illuminated him clearly as they ordered him to put his hands up. Kyle was clearly intoxicated, slurring his words as he tried to explain that he just wanted to see his daughter. The officers were unimpressed, especially when I showed them the restraining order that had been issued following the custody hearing. They arrested him on the spot for criminal trespass and violation of a court order. As they led him to the patrol car in handcuffs, he looked back at me with such hatred in his eyes that I felt physically ill. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. For a few weeks, things were quiet. Lily started to come out of her shell, laughing and playing like she used to. I took time off work to be with her, wanting to make up for the months we'd been separated. The first few days after Kyle's arrest were tense. I jumped at every sound, constantly checking the security camera feeds on my phone. But as days passed without incident, I gradually began to relax. Lily and I established a new routine: breakfast together every morning, then activities designed to help her recover from her ordeal. Her therapist had recommended a combination of structured activities and free play, with plenty of opportunities for Lily to make choices and feel in control. We baked cookies together, planted flowers in the garden, visited the local playground when few other children were there, to avoid overwhelming her. Slowly, I saw glimpses of my happy, curious daughter returning. The first time she laughed, really laughed, head thrown back in uninhibited joy. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom so she wouldn't see me cry with relief. At night, she still had nightmares sometimes, waking up crying that she was locked in and couldn't get out. I would hold her, assuring her that she was safe, that her door would never be locked, that she could come find me anytime she needed to. Gradually, the nightmares became less frequent. Then Vanessa called with news. Tara had finally left Kyle after he'd hit her during an argument. She and the kids were staying with Vanessa. CPS was involved, and Kyle was facing charges for Max's injuries. "He's spiraling," Vanessa warned me. "Be careful." The call came on a Sunday afternoon. Vanessa's voice was a mixture of relief and anxiety as she explained what had happened. Kyle showed up hammered last night, demanding to see the kids. Tara refused, and he hit her, right in front of Max and Emma. She finally saw him for what he is. Tara had taken the children and fled to Vanessa's house, where they were now staying while CPS continued their investigation. Max and Emma were in therapy, beginning the long process of healing from Kyle's abuse. "The police are looking for Kyle," Vanessa added. "He disappeared after the incident. That's why I'm calling. I'm worried he might come after you and Lily." I doubled down on security, adding more cameras and an alarm system. I was taking no chances with Lily's safety. After Vanessa's warning, I upgraded my security system to include glass break sensors on all windows, motion detectors in key areas of the house, and a panic button that would immediately summon police. I changed our routines, varying the times we left for school and other activities. I informed Lily's school about the situation, providing them with a copy of the restraining order and strict instructions about who was authorized to pick her up. At night, I moved Lily into my bedroom temporarily, setting up a small bed next to mine so I could keep her close. During the day, I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for her sake, but my eyes constantly scanned our surroundings whenever we were in public, looking for any sign of Kyle. The final confrontation came a month later. I was awakened at midnight by my alarm system. Someone was trying to break in through the back door. I grabbed my phone and Lily and locked us in the bathroom, calling 911. The harsh blaring of the alarm jolted me from sleep. For a moment, I was disoriented. Then adrenaline kicked in as I realized what was happening. The security app on my phone showed someone at the back door, trying to force it open. I moved on autopilot, rushing to Lily's bed and scooping her up. She woke confused and frightened. "Mommy? What's that noise?" "It's just the alarm, sweetie," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "We need to go to the bathroom for a little while." I carried her to the master bathroom, the only room in the house with no windows and a solid door. I locked us inside, then called 911 with shaking hands. "Someone is breaking into my home," I whispered to the dispatcher. "My daughter is with me. We're locked in the bathroom. I have a restraining order against my ex-husband, and I think it's him. Stay on the line. Is there anything in the bathroom you can use to barricade the door?" I looked around frantically, then dragged the heavy hamper in front of the door. Lily was fully awake now, her eyes wide with fear. I held her close, whispering reassurances while listening intently to the sounds from the rest of the house. The crash of breaking glass was followed by heavy footsteps. He was inside. I could hear him moving through the house, calling my name, his voice slurred and angry. "I know you're in here," Kyle shouted. "You think you can take everything from me? My daughter, my family, my freedom? Come out and face me." Lily trembled in my arms, and I covered her ears, trying to shield her from his rage. The footsteps grew closer, moving down the hallway toward the bedroom. The police arrived within minutes and caught Kyle in the act. He was hammered and incoherent, ranting about how I'd ruined his life. They found a knife in his pocket. The sound of sirens was the most welcome noise I'd ever heard. Through the bathroom window, I could see red and blue lights reflecting off the walls. There were shouts from outside, then the sound of officers entering the house. "Police! Show your hands!" There was a commotion, the sound of a struggle, something heavy falling, a man's voice cursing, then silence, followed by the crackling of police radios. A knock on the bathroom door made me jump. "Police department! Is anyone in there?" I moved the hamper and opened the door to find two officers standing there, one with his hand on his holster. Behind them, I could see more officers leading Kyle away in handcuffs. His face was contorted with rage, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Are you and your daughter okay, ma'am?" one officer asked. I nodded, unable to speak as relief washed over me. Lily clung to me, her face buried against my shoulder. Later, as paramedics checked us both for shock, a detective explained what they'd found. Kyle had been carrying a hunting knife in his pocket. In his car, parked a block away, they'd found rope, duct tape, and a crude map with directions to Vanessa's house. He'd planned to go there next. This time, Kyle went to jail. He was charged with attempted breaking and entering, violating the restraining order, and possession of a weapon with intent to harm. Combined with the child abuse charges from Max's case, he was looking at serious time. The weeks following Kyle's arrest were a blur of police interviews, court appearances, and meetings Meetings with prosecutors. The evidence against Kyle was overwhelming. The security footage, the weapons he'd been carrying, his prior arrest for trespassing, and the documented history of abuse toward Lily and his stepchildren. The prosecutor explained that Kyle was facing multiple felony charges, including attempted breaking and entering, violation of a restraining order, possession of a weapon with intent to commit a crime, and child endangerment. Combined with the pending charges related to Max's injuries, he was looking at a significant prison sentence. "We're recommending no bail," the prosecutor told me. "Given his escalating behavior and the clear danger he poses to you and your daughter, we believe he should remain in custody until trial." The judge agreed, and Kyle was held without bail. For the first time in months, I could sleep through the night without fear. In the aftermath, I connected with Tara. She was still processing the reality of who Kyle really was. We met for coffee, and she apologized for believing his lies about me. Our meeting was awkward at first. We sat across from each other at a quiet cafe, two women connected by the same abusive man. Tara looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and a fading bruise on her cheek where Kyle had hit her. "He was so convincing," she said. "He made you sound like this crazy, obsessive ex who couldn't let go. That's his specialty," I replied. "Twisting the truth until you doubt yourself." We talked for hours, comparing notes on our experiences with Kyle. The patterns were identical: the initial charm, the gradual isolation, the explosive anger, the manipulation. We'd both been victims of the same predator, drawn in by his charisma and trapped by his abuse. "I feel so stupid," Tara confessed, tears welling in her eyes. "I let him hurt my children. I defended him when my mother tried to warn me." "You're not stupid," I assured her. "You're a victim, just like Max and Emma, just like Lily, but you got out. You protected your children when it mattered most." We decided to help our children maintain their relationship as step-siblings. Lily missed Max and Emma, and they missed her. We arranged playdates and shared holidays, creating a new kind of blended family, one without Kyle. The first playdate was emotional for everyone. Lily was nervous, unsure how Max and Emma would feel about her now. But the moment they saw each other, the children ran together in a group hug, all talking at once about how much they'd missed each other. Watching them play together, laughing, sharing toys, completely at ease, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. These children had formed a bond through shared trauma, but that bond could now become something positive, a source of support and understanding as they healed. Tara and I established a routine of weekly playdates, alternating between our homes. We celebrated birthdays and holidays together, creating new traditions that helped all three children feel secure and loved. Vanessa often joined us, her relationship with Tara healing as they both focused on the children's well-being. The last I heard, Kyle was sentenced to 5 years in prison. He lost all parental rights to Lily, and was barred from contact with Max and Emma as well. The trial was mercifully brief. With the mountain of evidence against him and his prior record, Kyle's lawyer advised him to accept a plea deal. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the breaking and entering and weapons charges, plus an additional 3 years for the child abuse charges related to Max's injuries, to be served consecutively. As part of the plea agreement, Kyle was required to relinquish all parental rights to Lily. The judge also issued a permanent restraining order prohibiting him from contacting me, Lily, Tara, Max, or Emma upon his release. Any violation would result in immediate return to prison. I attended the sentencing hearing, needing to see this chapter of our lives officially closed. Kyle looked nothing like the charming man I'd married. His jail jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame, his eyes were dull, and his once confident posture was gone. When given the opportunity to speak, he offered no apology, no acknowledgement of the harm he'd caused, just a mumbled statement about unfair treatment by the courts. As he was led away in handcuffs, I felt no satisfaction, only relief that he could no longer hurt Lily or any other child. It took time, but Lily eventually stopped asking about him. The nightmares faded. She stopped flinching at loud noises. She became my happy, confident little girl again. Lily's recovery was gradual but steady. The therapist who specialized in childhood trauma was amazed by her resilience. Children can heal from incredible hardships when they have consistent love and support, she told me during one of our parent consultations. There were setbacks, of course. Nights when Lily would wake up screaming, convinced she was locked in her room at Kyle's house. Days when a small trigger, a man who looked like Kyle at the grocery store, a raised voice, a certain smell, would cause her to withdraw or become anxious. But these incidents became less frequent as time passed. School became a safe haven for her. Her kindergarten teacher, Ms. Wilson, was wonderfully supportive, creating a predictable routine that helped Lily feel secure. She made friends, participated in class activities, and gradually regained her natural curiosity and enthusiasm for learning. At home, we established new rituals that reinforced Lily's sense of safety and control. She chose what we'd have for dinner one night each week. We had free days, where she decided our activities from morning until bedtime. I kept my promises religiously, knowing how important reliability was to a child who had experienced betrayal. By Lily's 6th birthday, the changes were remarkable. She laughed easily, played imaginatively, and had developed a close circle of friends. She rarely mentioned Kyle, and when she did, it was without fear, just matter-of-fact references to my dad who's in jail. She had accepted this reality and moved beyond it. Sometimes I think about that Halloween night when all the kids were trading candy on my living room floor, how something so simple, an act of kindness, could trigger such rage and vengeance in Kyle, how far he was willing to go to punish me for being good to his stepchildren. That Halloween night seems like a lifetime ago. I can still picture the 3 children sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by colorful candy wrappers, trading treats, and giggling together. It was such an innocent moment, children being children, finding joy in simple pleasures. I never could have imagined that this act of normal kindness would unleash such darkness, that Kyle would see my care for his stepchildren not as generosity but as a threat, that he would go to such extreme lengths, fabricating a CPS investigation, manipulating the courts, breaking into my home with a weapon, all because his fragile ego couldn't bear the thought of his children preferring time with me. In retrospect, the signs of Kyle's true nature had always been there: the controlling behavior during our marriage, the quick temper, the ability to charm others while Kyle being cruel behind closed doors. I had mistaken his possessiveness for passion, his dominance for strength. It took seeing him through Lily's eyes, and later through Max and Emma's, to recognize the truth. But mostly, I think about how we survived, how we're thriving now, and how Kyle, for all his schemes and manipulation, ultimately destroyed himself. Today, our lives bear little resemblance to those dark days. Lily is thriving in school, developing her talent for art and her love of science. She has playdates with friends, sleepovers, birthday parties, all the normal childhood experiences she deserves. Her relationship with Max and Emma remains strong, a silver lining from an otherwise terrible situation. Tara and I have developed an unlikely friendship, supporting each other through the aftermath of Kyle's abuse. She's returned to school to finish her nursing degree, determined to create a stable future for her children. Vanessa has become like a second grandmother to Lily, often watching all three children when Tara and I need a break. As for me, I found strength I never knew I possessed. The woman who once doubted herself, who almost lost her daughter to a manipulative ex-husband, has been replaced by someone more confident, more determined, more aware of her own worth. I've become an advocate for domestic violence awareness, sharing our story, with names changed, to help others recognize the warning signs I missed. Kyle, for all his efforts to control and destroy us, accomplished the opposite. He brought together two families who might never have connected otherwise. He forced us all to discover reserves of courage and resilience we didn't know we had. And in the end, while he sits in a prison cell, we are free, not just physically, but emotionally, free to build the happy, peaceful lives that he tried so hard to prevent. Sometimes, when I watch Lily laughing with Max and Emma during our family gatherings, I think about how strange life can be, how the worst experiences can lead to unexpected blessings, how people can find their way back to joy, even after unimaginable pain. And I know, with absolute certainty, that we're going to be okay. Officers are on the way, the dispatcher assured me.